fixing it, and therein lies the problem of their own. So they say things like, they're on, but they're wrong, Charlize, they're wrong, and hence this song. Welcome to the Theronathon. We're gonna do the Theronathon. Take a bite and chew the Theronathon. Juicy like fondue, the Theronathon. Get a film review at the Theronathon. Woohoo, the Theronathon. I'm sniffing glue.
You are listening to Theronathon. We are going to take you on an epic journey through every single Charlize Theron movie. And by we, I mean myself, Regina Connolly, my good pal, Robin Elaine Hitchcock.
Hello.
And Bob Shields.
Hello.
This week we have a very special guest, Sean Collier.
Hi, everybody.
You may know Sean from his film reviews in Pittsburgh Magazine, or his appearances on the DVE morning show on the radio, or his movie podcast, You Can't Handle the Truth.
Where everyone on this side of the table has appeared.
That's true. His side of the table is me and him.
Right.
Regina and Bob, I'm inviting them future guests.
Yes, definitely.
Deal.
You apparently now have inviting privileges.
Wait.
This is what I said, that the moment that Frankly Scarlet assembled on our podcast, it was slowly ceded to Frankly Scarlet.
That's true.
Eventually we will vanish.
Can we
With Aaron Cliver is the we, by the way.
Can we preemptively request to be on for Atomic Blonde?
I was going to offer that at the end of the episode.
Okay, we can re-edit that. Okay,
If-
that it's a delightful kindness.
Assuming that it works and that they screen it, which is always a question. But yes, if there is an advanced screening of Atomic Blonde and we are podcasting it, of course, the Theronathon team will be the guest.
Thank you, Sean.
So
Of
delightful.
course.
So we're so happy to have Sean here because he is like an actual real deal movie critic, and he has a podcast with, what did you say, 200 episodes?
I think this week was 193.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And, as you can hear, an amazing radio voice.
Correct.
You know, if only it were a viable field for full-time employment in 2017, which is a thing I say about everything I do.
Yeah,
But
you've
yes,
cobbled
thank you.
together one amount of
Right.
full time.
My job is having opinions about things, and many of those things are movies, so here we are.
So, what is your one sound opinion on Kubo and the Two Strings, which is our movie today? I think we glossed over that one.
Oh yeah, we're doing Kubo and the Two Strings, which came out in
2016.
I never know that.
My one sound is like, which is the sound of, like, qualified praise is coming,
Okay.
I think.
We'll expand on that, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Regina.
My one sound review is because there was a hiccup in there.
I think my one-side review is, whoa.
And mine is
That was a variety of sounds.
Yeah.
It's a deep movie, y'all.
So I think I want to start this conversation talking about why I asked Sean to come, other than all of his, qualifications, is that he and I had specifically talked about this movie when it came out and the problematic elements of it, specifically that it is a story set in Japan and it's an animated movie and the voice cast is almost entirely white. So I wanted to take a while to talk about why we have reservations and why Regina's noise had a hiccup, and then we can talk about the movie beyond its crippling flaws.
Yeah, well, this is because Robin is my go-to source when I am not woke enough to figure out how I feel about a movie. I have conflicting thoughts, and then I Facebook message Robin, and she tells me what I'm thinking. Very accurately every time. And I don't think I really properly reviewed Kubo. I was going to write something about the luxury cinema
Oh, yeah.
in West Mifflin, which is great. You get to recline fully. And I just needed to see a movie, and I had missed Kubo, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll see that. So I was freed of, like, having to figure out what I was going to write, but I couldn't, just in thinking about it, I couldn't get past, like, why all of these white voices, though?
Right.
And our discussion, I think, was mostly about, like, is it better or worse in animation to whitewash a movie? And I mentally settled on, like, it's marginally less offensive, but way more, like, stupid and ridiculous. Because, okay, there's not literally a white person who I'm looking at their face and you're telling me that this clearly white person is Asian. So, minor points for that.
Yeah.
But, like, the only excuse, I don't want to say defense because it's not really defensible, the excuse that studios use for casting white people in Asian roles is we need to sell tickets, so we need recognizable faces, which is horrible, but that's the excuse. And in an animated movie, that just isn't a thing. Like, no one goes to see a movie for the voice of Charlize Theron or Matthew McConaughey.
Well, some of us have a
Well,
podcast.
other
where
than
we're
the
contractually
three of you.
obligated.
The three of you are the only three.
We literally did go see this movie
Right.
with this podcast in
Yes.
mind. So
Yeah.
we are the only 3 people in the universe who saw Kubo and the Two Strings because of the box office power of Charlize Theron.
She did get top billing, guys, in the credits. I
She
did
does.
double check.
Yes.
I also, we're doing spoilers on this, yes?
Yeah.
Great. So I had also sort of thought, like, again, it's not defensible, but I was like, it is at least representative, like, in terms of what you're looking at. It is Japanese characters. And I thought for a while, I was like, well, Charlize Theron is playing a monkey.
Right.
So, like, I guess it's a monkey. But, spoiler, guys, she's not actually a monkey. She
No.
is the mom who uses magic to be a monkey temporarily. So, yeah, and I don't know, like, I do think it is legitimate to, like, start all discussions of this movie from that point of being like, why did you guys have to do this? Because I would like to live in the better world where you did use Japanese voice actors and we could just talk about how great I think this movie is.
We wouldn't be recording this episode, but we would be having a conversation about how much we love this movie.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. And more so in this case because it's not, simply, this isn't like a Studio Ghibli movie where they want to release it for 8-year-old Americans so they get American actors to do the dub. Like, this is directed and produced and written and everything by
White Americans.
white Americans aping Studio Ghibli most of all, but also just Japanese films. So it's like, this is an impression of a Japanese movie,
Right.
which is like definitely like, I'm glad you like that, but there's no real reason to do that.
Does it change it at all that this is an original story versus an adaptation of like a traditional Japanese?
See, I don't know.
I don't know if it does or not.
So I am curious. I don't know that much about Japanese culture, but it seems to me that the mythos and the legend that they're telling here is made up.
Yes.
It's a
So-
wholly original story.
Right.
Correct. And it's not tied to any specific places in Japan. Like, there
Right.
aren't, like, specific locations of, like, cities or towns, things like that. Like, it's very untethered from a physical world in that respect.
Right. But then they take, like, certain iconography, like from Buddhism and...
Origami,
right. And
samurai.
yeah, and it's like, okay, are they doing any of this respectfully? And because of the casting, my gut tells me no.
On the is this more or less offensive than Ghost in the Shell scale,
Yeah.
I think honestly more, because there's just so few Japanese people involved. And the few Asian performers are like, here's your 2 lines
Yeah, they're
that
extras.
we're throwing to you.
Right, they
You
put
know?
George Takei in the credits, but he literally has the "oh my" cameo.
Right.
That's it.
Oh, he shows up in the graveyard teaching
does
his
he speak?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
Okay.
teaches his granddaughter about spirits
Oh,
for
that's
a minute.
him?
I think that
Oh,
was
that
him.
makes a
think
little
so.
bit more sense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
also, like, I feel like it's worth saying, like, I'm interested to find out, like the nuances of it, but I also want to say, like, full stop, like, it is not defensible, and we're not being like, well, they did this, so it's okay.
Oh, right.
Like,
Right.
I think it's an interesting, I don't know, thing to look at and try to figure out, but I'm not trying to defend their choices.
And as we're about to indicate, and I think this is really, really important because this doesn't get said a lot, like, it's possible to be like, no, this is not okay. I really liked this movie. That's fine as long as you have the first part.
Yeah.
And I'm with Ghost in the Shell. I'm the same way. I'm like, that was a very, very bad decision, and I enjoyed the movie. I think as long as you acknowledge these things, you can still. It's Super Mario Brothers. Super Mario Brothers is the best. It has a troubling, like, plot line. But yeah, I said that, so now I can play Super Mario Brothers forever.
Wait,
right?
what's troubling about Super Mario Brothers? The damsel in
Yeah,
distress
it's just
elements?
a damsel
Okay.
in distress over and over again for infinity.
I thought it was hackneyed representations of Italian America.
Yeah.
I was like, wait,
Okay.
I don't think that's the same as how we treat Asian people in films. But anyway.
Bob, do you have any thoughts? I feel like we've sort of talked over you at this point.
I mean, if there's like 1,000 caveats you can offer of this movie, like it's like you can look at it through the other end of the telescope and be like, well, the question is not why are there no Asian actors, it's why is it set in Japan? Like, why
Right.
is it not just set in 1950s America?
Right.
I don't know why. So but
Because he needed a 3-string guitar for the metaphor to work.
could have just had a regular broken guitar.
Yeah.
Or a ukulele. Or,
Do ukuleles have 3 strings?
I have no
They
idea.
have 4.
4,
Okay.
I think, but I have no idea.
What's the name of that guitar?
Shamisen.
The shamisen, okay.
So yeah, but other than that, like, there's no possible logical reason why they would do that in the way that, like, I don't know what it is. It's weird.
I believe that I read the director in, like, response to this and his thing of saying, like, this is the only way we could get funding. Because, like, people, like, producers thought that the only way that this movie would sell was if people, there were more people like us who always go to see Charlize Theron movies. Which I don't know if that is true or not, but I also am kind of like, well, if you continue to act that way, then it will always be true.
And spoiler, this did not do well.
No, it did terribly. I think it was actually the worst one of Leica's movies,
Right.
none of which have
Really?
made a lot of money.
That is
Yeah.
really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
This made like 74 globally,
It's
like
so-
45 here, which is for any big animated production is terrible.
horrible flop.
Yeah.
I was really sad that it didn't win the Academy Award. I think this movie, including all the problematic elements, is beautiful and true. Like,
Yeah.
I think it is a great, great story.
Okay, we're gonna have to do the thing where we put the mic up to Netflix to get Matthew McConaughey saying, "This is problematic."
Yes.
Yeah.
This is problematic.
So I don't want to do okay, we've talked about why this is problematic, let's move on.
No.
Right.
But I do want to sort of address the rest of this movie.
Should I summarize it?
Yes,
Quickly?
please.
Yes.
Okay, so the movie starts in one of the best storytelling openings of a movie that I've seen in a long time. There's a woman in a boat and a giant wave, and she uses her magical shamisen to split the waters, and there's narration going on behind her, and then she gets hit by a wave behind her, hits her head on the ocean floor, washes up with her baby, and that's how it begins, and then there are credits. And then you realize that Kubo has grown up, he was the baby, to be like a young boy, and he's
He
staying with his mom.
Doesn't have an eyeball.
He is missing an eyeball, which his grandfather took from him. And his mother is not 100% there mentally. So at different times of the day, she's very vacant, and he takes care of her. He goes into the town and is a storyteller and does magic with origami. Like, there's paper storytelling and folding. And he is never allowed to be outside after moonrise. But surprise, because it's a movie, he does stay out after the sun sets, and his evil relatives, the twin sisters of the Moon King and the Moon King, are hunting him because they want his second eyeball. So this kicks off a whole adventure. His mother stays to fight the sisters and dies, and he finds himself in a snowy wasteland with a monkey come to life, who is Charlize Theron, and the monkey is very grumpy, and she's like, "Get in this dead whale! I don't care how much you think it stinks." And they're all like, "Oh, what's gonna happen?" And he has to essentially live out the story that he was telling in the village, which is assembling 3 pieces of armor that will make him invincible so he can defend himself against his grandfather, who is the evil Moon King. On the course of their journey, they run into a beetle who has no memory, but is not played by Ellen DeGeneres. It is, in fact, Matthew McConaughey, which, sidebar, my opinion of that is, ugh. Anyway, so the beetle joins their quest, and they continue to look for the 3 different elements. Adventure ensues. They are pursued by the evil sisters, who are so well designed and
So
scary. And we learn that actually the monkey is what's left of his mother, and that the magic is fading, so she will only temporarily be the monkey before she passes away. Later we learn that the beetle is actually his father, who was turned into a beetle and drained of his memories as revenge because they had fallen in love. Because his mother was originally a Moon Kingdom person, and when she came to the Earth to kill Hanzo, she fell in love with him because she looked in his eyes and saw humanity, and she'd never felt that in the Moon Kingdom
Because
before.
he said, "You are my quest."
Yes. And so they realize who one another are. Then they shortly thereafter die. And then Kubo has to return to his village where the last piece of armor has been all along. And he has to fight his grandfather, the Moon King. And at first he tries to use the armor and the unbreakable sword. And this is not the way to destroy them. And instead, he uses his shamisen, which has lost all of its strings. And through the course of the movie, when he was separated from his mother, he plucked a hair from her head. And after the beetle had died, he brought the bowstring with him. And those were the 2 strings around his wrist, which were the memory of his family and what it meant to be loved. And he ties those onto the shamisen along with his own hair from his head, being a complete family. And he defeats the Moon King by showing him the beauty of family love and community. The Moon King then becomes human with one eye, which is Kubo's, has no memory. And then the town writes his story for him, making him a good person. And
they're like, "You're Mr. Rogers," and he's like, "Am I?"
He's like, I don't know. And then Kubo realizes he will need to take care of his grandfather because he's a good person. And even though it's an animated feature, I'm very happy to report that his parents don't magically come back from the dead, but instead you see Kubo grieving and letting his parents go via a lit lantern into the river, and he continues to live among the people. Tears. Credits.
That was a very good and succinct summary, and also you made me want to cry again because this movie is so sad. Oh my god!
I felt tear energy coming off of me. Like you didn't sob, but I was like, I feel weeping to my right.
It was almost there.
Yeah.
So I think this movie will, get to anyone. It is extremely emotional, but I am extra super vulnerable to its magic because my parents both died when I was 21, 12 years ago, and they died in close succession. And when Kubo's mom is dying, when Monkey is dying, so his mom for real is dying, she's like, "Hanzo, you have to take care of Kubo." And while she is giving him that speech, Hanzo is killed.
From behind. So you don't see him stabbed, you just see death wash over his face.
And it's like, why is this happening? This is too real. So this movie is just laser focused to making me cry. But I think it'd make anybody cry.
Yeah, I mean, even if you only have one dead parent, it's still very sad. And I remember watching it and very much being nervous that the end of the movie was going to be, he was going to use his magic and his parents were going to be with him. And I was kind of like, I feel like you're very honest about a lot of other sad things in this movie, that if you subvert the ending and it's like, yay, that would do the storytelling that you just did an injustice. And they talk a lot about, like, storytelling is a big theme throughout it. And they talk a lot about, is this a happy story? Is this a sad story? Like, both in his dream and when he interacts with the Moon King. And I felt like them saying that, like, even with dead parents, it can still be a happy story. Like, you can still live your life and you will have the strings of them. I was like, I think that is a better message, even if it meant that it was a flop at the box office.
Right.
Because people were like, that's too sad to watch.
The Moon King's like, everything you love has been taken from you. And he's like, no, I have their memories, and that's the most powerful magic.
My favorite thing about this is that it's a kid's movie with stakes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which, every kid's movie, most every kid's movie has that kind of Marvel level stakes where it's like, if we don't get it right, the world's gonna end, in a way that there's never 1 second where you think anything actually bad is going to happen. It's just what hoop is the hero going to jump through to triumph? And this is, I remember sitting in the theater and thinking, they're talking about death and failure and the real permanent loss of loved ones in ways that I don't remember kids' movies talking about since we were kids.
Right.
Because for some reason in the 80s and 90s, you could be like, there could be misery in children's movies.
Yeah.
And that really got sanitized over the last 20 years.
Yeah, the only other one I can think of that's even close is like The Iron Giant has like real feeling stakes and danger in it. But this like the sisters they really seem like they're gonna kill him.
Yeah.
Like, it really comes across like it's a real credible threat.
You see Monkey's, like, slashed up wound on her side. It's not just like, oh, like, she kind of got kicked. It's like, no, she's got an open sore.
Yeah.
Let's look at that.
Yeah.
In clay form.
And I watched it again this morning because I had planned to for a long time, and so inevitably left it till this morning. In the first sequence where she's knocked from the boat and like smashes her face on an underwater rock, I was like, oh yeah, this movie is brutal.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that she doesn't appear to recover from.
Right.
It's like,
permanent injury.
Right. Like it cost her something to save her son that she will always have with her. And it's not just she's got a little scar. It's like, no, she has actual
She does have a scar.
She does.
And on the Charlize eyebrow report, I would like to say that in human form, her eyebrow has a scar through it, just like mine.
It's true. Also, doesn't the monkey have a scar?
Yes, the monkey has a scar, but it's on the opposite side of its face. And I can't quite figure that one out. And at the end, the Moon King also has a scar.
Is there a chance that they made the monkey model, got it wrong, and then said, this model took 7 months to make, so we are not correcting this?
Yes, it is also a chance that there's some kind of mirror image thing going on.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would also like to... This is the second time I've seen it, so I did see it in theaters, and I know that Charlize Theron is the monkey.
Yeah.
And I know that the monkey's the mother, but at the beginning, I kept being like, is that still Charlize as the voice actor? And I think she very successfully masks that it's the same actor for both. Like, I think when the monkey appears, you're not like, that's the mom!
Yeah, it's just a common trap for having famous people play nice things. Like, you can, it's like, they're distinctively that person. Whereas she managed to convincingly play two separate characters you're not supposed to know are the same character, and her distinctiveness doesn't give it away, which is really unheard of.
If you watch this on Netflix, which it's on Netflix, so you should watch it, the caption says, Mother's voice, the first time Monkey speaks.
Oh.
So...
Wah, 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 wah.
I mean, here's the thing. So I knew it was Charlize Theron for both parts because I know what her voice sounds like and I was attuned to it.
Mm-hmm.
But the scar thing, I think you'd figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking what Bob mentioned about famous people like not being able to lose their personality into a role, that's how I feel about Matthew McConaughey, who I do not hate as an actor. I delight in him in other things.
Sahara.
Exactly. Sahara's a great film, everyone. But I found him...
Really?
Oh, yeah.
We love that movie.
Okay. Go with it.
I found him so distracting as the Beetle. I was just like, that's Matthew McConaughey. That's Matthew McConaughey. And I really, like, it took me out of it. And, like, in the theater, it bothered me a little bit less because I was overwhelmed by, like, the delight and the surprise elements that the movie, like, consistently delivers. But on rewatching, I was just like, nope, nope, nope.
So I have the opposite thing where I keep thinking the Beatles played by George Clooney. Because I think Matthew McConaughey is, like, neutralizing his accent somewhat. And that role is, like, the kind of, like, well-meaning dumb person that George Clooney plays very well. So the whole time, like, I know it's Matthew, even the second time, like, I know it's Matthew McConaughey, but he really sounds like George Clooney to me.
You know, there's another actor who plays well-meaning dumb people really well, who might have been in this movie.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves.
He might have.
What role would he have played?
Well, my first answer was immediately like, I want him as the Beetle. Like,
Me
get
too.
out of there, McConaughey. But I guess my second answer is like, maybe I just wouldn't cast him in this because he's a white person and we think that this should have...
He's slightly less white than Matthew McConaughey.
That is true.
I guess we will have a whole podcast to discuss the variable whiteness of Keanu Reeves. But for our listeners, he has Native Hawaiian and Chinese ancestry.
Huh.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
So his grandmother is Native Hawaiian and Chinese. So he's basically like Emma Stone's character in Aloha.
And
but
they look
for
very
real.
similar.
So, in any event, he's white passing for sure. But less white than Matthew McConaughey.
Correct. Also, I think less distracting because when I saw Keanu Reeves voice act in the great film Keanu,
Yes.
I did take a second, and I'm very attuned to Keanu's voice. Maybe I'm just bad at identifying people, but I was like, is he really doing it? Is he really doing it? And he was.
Any thoughts of other things that Keanu could do in this movie if we were to use him?
So I would have thought he would be good if he replaced Rooney Mara as the sisters.
Ooh.
Because he plays scary very well. And
Yeah.
like his leveling, like very kind of calm voice, and their dialogue is very like, well, we just have to do this, Kubo. Give us your eye. You don't need it. Like their like ever encroaching thing would be very kind of creepy if he was doing it.
Would it still be sisters, just with a more male voice?
It could be. Who
Okay.
knows? I'm sure he could do it.
It could
He's got
also be
range.
brothers.
Yeah.
You could skip it.
Okay. I'm sorry. If I have to leave immediately, that's fine.
Uh-huh.
But I do not like Keanu Reeves.
Okay. It's been nice to have you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
I appreciate. No, I Robin and I have talked about John Wick, which I do not like.
It's been okay to have you.
Right. No, I'm not a bit like I think he goes between like bizarrely appropriate for the role he's doing, like The Matrix, and laughably bad, like that rom-com with Diane Keaton and Jack Nicholson.
We'll be watching
Something's Gotta Give.
Something's Gotta Give. So, it's difficult to figure out where I would put him in a movie, and I settled on the fire-breathing chicken at the beginning. Where I was like, okay, if instead of making stock chicken noises, that fire-breathing chicken was like, whoa, I was like, okay, yeah, that was good. That would have been good. That's where I would have used Keanu.
That's a good use of him.
I thought you were going to make him the eyeball under the water.
No, a silent character.
I also realized I cannot Photoshop this week. That's going to have to not happen for the Instagram.
I think what you can do is do a picture of the chicken and underneath Keanu's voice, whoa.
Perfect. Great. Awesome.
What would you cast him as?
Oh, Beetle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I'm not going to go past the obvious on this one.
Cool.
I think also a thing that's worth mentioning in terms of recasting is that this movie doesn't have many extraneous characters, and it has, I feel like, for an animated feature for kids, long moments of silence.
Yeah.
So, like, long, like, stretches without dialogue. And not just in the Up scenario where it's like, we're gonna wrench your emotions for a 2-minute silence sequence and then we'll have a movie. Like, I feel like they weave it very much into the style of the entire film, that there are long periods of time that are quiet and sinister.
Let's talk about how pretty it is.
It's unbelievably pretty.
So pretty.
So yeah, I mean I was like watching. I'm reluctant to look into how they did everything because I want to like maintain the magic. Like this is the first like movie magical thing I've ever seen. Like you can like take a cynical hat and like be like, oh, the water and the smoke are probably CGI or at least enhanced by computers.
Right.
But generally speaking, I'm like I maybe like peer through the end credits to see like what kind of animators they had. But generally speaking, I'm like, this movie looks amazing. I don't want to know how they did everything. It's just awe-inspiringly brilliant. And like, even though it's hand animated, it still has all of like the detail and scene complexity of things like Avatar and WALL-E, and I don't know how they did it.
I don't either.
It's incredible.
They show at the end in the credits them creating the set piece of the big skeleton with the swords in his head.
Yeah.
And it's so cool looking. Like, it's so cool to see that. But I agree that there's just like the things that I'm like, that has to be computer animated.
Yeah.
And I bet that sometimes it was, but there had to be other times it wasn't.
So I think looking in the credits, there's a lot of, maybe like 3 or 4 like CGI face animators. So I think they enhance people's faces with CGI.
Okay.
But beyond that, like I couldn't really tell like
I
how
think
it was done.
I think the backgrounds are computer animated, and everything in front of them is stop motion.
That makes sense.
And Leica made the completely unverifiable claim that skeleton is the largest stop motion puppet ever created.
It's huge.
Which is believable.
Yeah.
I mean, how would you know? But that's very believable. So there are 4 Leica movies. Coraline was first.
Coraline,
Paranorman,
Box Trolls, and this.
And they've always been very interestingly designed and very well animated. This was the first one where it passes into, wow, this is goddamn magical.
Right.
Yeah.
This is really where I think they stepped forward and established not just we're good at doing stop motion animation, but we have a visual language and a thing that we're doing that really no one has ever done before.
Yeah. And this movie would not be as beautiful if they had used any other form of animation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just using it because that's what they're doing.
Right. And also, like, as a weird side note, I also noticed I had the weird thing of using someone's VR headset to watch this movie for a minute.
What?
Someone at work had a VR headset, and so we put it on. You can do like a virtual Netflix, like so it projects a living room around you and you get a screen, but that screen is just a small portion of the actual screen that's pressed against your face. So I put this movie on the Netflix and it doesn't look like it's hand animated anymore. It looks like it's computer animated because it's just a small portion of a small screen. So when you watch it on like a big screen, like you should definitely make an effort to see it on the biggest, largest, clearest screen that you should see. Otherwise you lose all of the magic of the detail and the texture and everything that goes into it.
I'm going to need more detail on the point of this VR program. You put on a headset, and it's not just, here's a movie really close to you. It's, here's a virtual living room that it is a living room simulator.
It is a living room simulator. It gives you a couch and a coffee table that has, like, fake magazines on it and stuff like this. which is illuminated by the movie. I have no idea what the point of that is, but it's a thing that you can do.
Maybe if you're like really afraid of flying, you can put it on and be like, I'm not flying, I'm in a living room. I'm watching a movie in a living room. So that could be a reason.
Yeah.
I did notice when we saw it in the biggest screen possible, I think we saw it at the waterfront.
We saw it in IMAX 3D, I believe.
Did you see it in 3D?
I think so.
I don't remember.
This movie consistently finds ways to surprise you, I think, with its visual language.
Yeah.
Like the use of the origami as like characters that come to life is just clever and delightful in a way that it's like, that's not a thing I've seen happen before. And I feel like they do that repeatedly throughout it. And that I think that there's like a lot of varied tone. Like at some point in the beginning, there's an old woman who's like, put the fire-breathing chicken in. People like humor.
Keanu.
And I think that was sort of them winking, being like, this is going to be a grim story, but don't worry, we're going to put a lot of jokes in.
Yeah.
Which they do, both visual and otherwise.
I think that the humor in this movie, while sometimes like, because Matthew McConaughey is very much like comic relief, and like he and Charlize have banter, and like there are times when it feels very like heavy-handed, like here are the jokes now,
Right.
but I laugh at every single one of them.
Yeah.
For example, when Matthew McConaughey says, this is problematic.
This is problematic.
I also think the puppet face acting, be it CGI or not, is amazing in this, because
particularly on Monkey.
I was gonna say, and like I do think that Charlize does a great job of inflecting a range of emotions into the role, because Monkey vacillates very quickly between being like grumpy and survival oriented to being very tender in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect a stop motion animation to like get that across. And
right.
It's very detailed, very nuanced.
I most of my podcast is reading things off of the IMDb trivia page, which I did earlier, and includes Kubo had over 48 million possible facial expressions, and a total of 23,187 prototype faces were created for him.
Wow.
So, yes.
Well, good job.
And that's
Way
with
just
more
one
expressive.
Those are all in a warehouse somewhere, which is weird.
Mm-hmm.
God, can you imagine walking into that warehouse and just having all those faces looking at
Better
you?
waking up in that warehouse.
I feel like sometimes this movie is hard to talk about because I'm like, I just think it's so good.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like, we talked about, like, how visually beautiful it is, but I also think, like, the actual storytelling devices, I feel like there are a lot of movies that are like, this is a movie about how stories are important. But I feel the way that it's framed from the beginning, like, using his technique that he uses, like, in the square. Like, I just feel like this movie hooks you from the moment that it starts with the, like, you must not blink or whatever it is that he says.
If you must blink, do it now.
Yes. So, speaking of the story, this was a thing where afterwards I was like, I'm going to think about this for a second. So, the Moon King comes back and he's a blank slate. Do all the villagers
so
just
weird.
immediately know that what they need to do is lie to him? Or has the past changed and he's always been there and they're just speaking their truth for the rewritten past?
I think they're lying.
I
Yeah.
think they're
Yeah.
lying too, but then that also seems like a troubling element of like, everyone has their own story, and like at some point when he's fighting the Moon King, he's like, well, that's your version of the story.
Right.
It does seem a little bit like, well, whatever you say happens to be the way it goes.
I find the end of this movie, I love this movie so much. The end of it, other than the racism, is the most problematic thing.
This is problematic.
Because I don't get it. I don't understand why the Moon King becomes human.
No.
I do.
Okay, why?
So when he plays the three strings,
Yeah.
he has Kubo's eye. And I think that through Kubo's eye, he's able to see humanity for the first time. And prior to that, he'd been blind to humanity's goodness, and that's why he needed both eyes from Kubo so that Kubo wouldn't be able to see the goodness of humanity. He could join the kingdom, which is why when he becomes human, he has one eye that works and one eye that doesn't, but when he's the Moon King, he doesn't have either of them there. So he's basically like, Kubo has forcefully opened his eye through the magic of family shamisen playing, and now like he will live with Kubo and like be the family, like the humanity caring family person, as opposed to, I think the other alternative ending would be like Kubo, a young child, murdering his family member, even if he's evil, is kind of like, that's not a great...
Well, he's a god, right? So like the Moon King and the sisters and Charlize, they're all not human.
Well, I think that his mother, by coming to Earth, has become human.
Oh, okay.
And that's part of the reason that they are angry with her, is that she's like forsaken her immortality.
Oh, right.
And he's like, if you're going to live like a person and die like a person. I think it's similar to...
All the other movies that are coming out recently. I feel like the big speech between the Moon King and Kubo at the end. It's like similar to like Wonder Woman, and it's just
And Guardians.
and it's just
Yeah.
like, do you want to be immortal or human?
Well, guys, I think didn't Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan do it first in that movie about angels coming to Earth?
pair.
Wait, what?
When he's sad at the end of that movie, he just grabs a bunch of pears very robotically.
What's
what
the name of that
movie is this?
City of Angels.
City of Angels.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
With
he
the
just-
Goo Goo Dolls song. I
Right,
remember.
yes.
He decides to give up his angelicness to become human, only to then have her die.
Correct.
And then he's like, ugh, being
Pear.
So I really like that explanation, but as someone who is constantly trying to justify things that happened on Twin Peaks, that does strike me as like, this sounds like a really believable explanation for a thing that the filmmakers had no explanation for, other than we want to have a nice moment where he has somebody at the end, and we are not going to sell ourselves out by bringing his family back.
I think they could have easily chosen the village in that respect.
Right.
They could have just had him.
I agree.
I don't think that they didn't have that in mind. I think that they spent so much time building those face models, they wouldn't accidentally put a matching eyeball in it.
Mm.
And the whole movie is about ripping an eyeball out of a kid's head.
So I thought that when they said my grandfather took my eyeball from me, they meant that he like plucked it out and squished it, but he was just hanging on to it in his pocket.
I think it's like a metaphorical eyeball after he
Okay.
pulls it out. And I think so it's like, he has taken it. And I don't think, like it's in his head because he's blind then.
Right. Yeah. I also just find it creepy and weird how this like super malicious evil force who like destroyed the village comes to life and has no memory, and the village is like, well, if we tell him he's a good person, he will be. That feels like the beginning of a really creepy story to me.
I agree.
Like, that would be a cool horror movie, right? Where we have this, like, evil person we've convinced is Mr. Rogers, and slowly his Mr. Rogers-like tendencies will fall to his true evil.
I'm fairly sure that exists, but I don't know what it is.
12 listeners, if you know, please let us in on that secret.
I mean, I do think that the movie trucks in a belief that, like, your story defines who you are. So I think
Yeah.
that by them creating that for him, I think that they've effectively boxed in.
I like how the little girl's like, and you give me candy.
Yeah, that was
Money all
nice.
the time.
No, so since I've already taken this role by defaming Keanu Reeves, I will continue being the curmudgeon just by saying I like this movie a whole bunch, but I think less than anyone else at this table because I thought it was
Prometheus chair.
right. I thought it was really ridiculously beautiful and thematically wonderful. Like, that summary you gave is a perfect story. And I think that Laika's, like, the mechanics of their storytelling are not all the way there yet. Like, I thought that in watching it again this morning, I was like, this skeleton fight is clearly, like, the most impressive, dazzling thing that happens in this movie. Why is it
In the middle.
in the middle and not at the end? Like, I feel like the fight against Dragon Moon King is a big, big letdown after that sequence.
He looks
And-
like the Shatari at the end of the Avengers.
He's also
Yeah.
like weirdly day glowy. I do not like how the look of
Yeah.
the final monster. I'm like,
It's not great.
You gave up on that.
I just
So
think
I
it-
agree with Sean, yes.
I think that mechanically it's a movie that peaks in the middle. And, like, I share these concerns about the ending, where the ending felt like, time for an ending now. Like, that will satisfy some of the thematic things, but not really neatly tie it up in a story sense.
And they keep talking about stories ending, right? Like, he
Right.
has, when he goes to the town and does his magical shamisen origami dance, it never ends the story. And they're like, oh, you have trouble with endings.
I think that's also their way of saying, like, stories don't end. There aren't endings.
Yeah.
Because as long as people remember that there is no final thing. So
Right.
I think that they deliberately aren't like, here's a neat bow and everything's perfect.
Right.
Because I think the message of the movie is that things carry on, that it's not simplistic. There's not a button at the end.
That's nice. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and also, like, all the little, like, internal logical decisions that all the characters make all follow through and make sense. And every twist has a satisfying and fulfilling explanation that comes after it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, with regards to, like, how the tent poles of the story are structured, like, I can see that that's a more impressive thing and, like, all that stuff. But I'm like, but it follows through. Like, it makes sense, like, why certain things happen at certain times.
Yeah.
In the context of, like, how it's progressing.
Yeah, I do. I would
Which
agree
is
with-
rare.
Yeah. I would agree with Sean. Like, I do feel like the story is like, here is the beginning, here is an action, here is an act. Like you know, there's three pieces of armor,
Right.
and it's like, but I don't necessarily think that bothers me.
No.
I was just pulling up when I sent in a nominating ballot last year, what I did, and I had Kubo third for 2016 among animated films.
After what?
Zootopia and Moana.
Oh, I think it vastly is better than Zootopia.
Yeah.
I
By
liked
far.
all three of those movies. They're all 4-star movies for me, so it's hard for me to be like, which one is slightly better? But I think that this one is closer to my heart. But then I might dock it points for the diversity thing and go to Moana. But I don't know. You know what? Maybe Zootopia. Okay, this is irrelevant to this podcast.
Right. Charlize Theron is not in either of
yes.
those movies.
So a thing that may or may not edge it above another movie would be if it could be improved upon. And would you think this movie would be improved by Prison Riot?
I also, again, like with Young Adult, I don't know where Prison Riot goes
I
in
don't
this
think it
movie.
would. Yeah. I think it's impossible to shoehorn one in.
And
I
this is
think
an
it wouldn't-
action movie, so
Yeah.
it should be able to have one. I guess that I was just struggling so much with what is the prison.
Right. I mean, I guess you could replace the forest of eyeballs could be then
Oh.
replaced, like instead the armor is then in a prison. But then it's just stupid. Like,
Well, here's the only way I could think you could shoehorn one in is the eyeballs keep people underwater so they can stay with them forever. So what if, like, similar to Ursula having all those weird plants, there were a bunch of people who'd gone to the armor but then were, like, kept in the eyeball prison and then they could riot out? I don't want this to be added to the movie,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that it's not improved by a prison riot, but that was the only place I could think of that we might be able to, like, squeeze it in.
Yeah.
because the eyeballs are like a genuinely scary
They're
threat.
so scary.
So it's like, yeah, I want to keep those in. I don't think we want to.
Have hijinks.
Yeah.
I only got to an alternate reality sequence where Monkey is imprisoned by the sisters in a prison full of actual bad guys and must defeat all of the, like, a monkey versus many actual villains.
Right.
But that does not fit in this narrative
Yeah.
in any way. So,
Yeah.
no.
So is there a new hypothesis emerging that Prison Riot can only improve movies that are not really good on their own? Is there a certain level of quality
that's what
where
we're-
Prison Riot stops being helpful?
Like,
Well,
have you
yeah.
done reindeer games yet?
No.
Like, it would be great in reindeer games.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's like Snow White and the Huntsman. So many ways to improve that with
Yes.
Prison Riot. Like you could, like the number of Prison Riots that can improve a movie is inversely proportional to how good it is.
Yeah.
But guys, didn't we start this with Fate of the Furious, which does include a prison riot?
Yes.
And we were like,
That's true.
and would that movie be less good without that prison riot?
Yeah,
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know. I think we're going to have to keep asking this question
Oh,
to
we're
get a
never
full
going to stop
hypothesis.
asking this question.
Yeah.
I'm just adding new potential hypotheses.
Okay.
Cool. So should we rank it?
Yeah. So, speaking of Fate of the Furious, I am putting this just behind it as my number 3. It would be my number 2, but I'm docking points for the diversity issue. And it particularly felt wrong to put it ahead of Fate of the Furious, which has a diverse cast. So I that didn't feel right. Even though I love this movie as much, if not more, it's gonna be in my 3rd slot.
I'm gonna put it in my 2nd slot. It's gonna be just below Young Adult for like story and character complexity reasons, and just above Fate of the Furious just because of pure effort. Like the amount of work and time and love that went into making this movie is far eclipses anything else that we've reviewed. Also, it gets extra points to me because of all the 12 movies that we've reviewed so far, this is only the 3rd original movie that we've done.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
The other 2 are Young Adult and 2 Days in the Valley.
Wow.
So the fact that this is an original story just pips it above, because like obviously a lot of effort went into Fate and the Furious, but this one just has more of everything.
But it was the fate in that series, so.
yeah.
For me, I find Robin's arguments very convincing about why Fate of the Furious should beat it, but I'm going to edge it out, even though I agree that Fate of the Furious has more diverse cast and a lot more cars in it. But I think that Charlize is amazing as Monkey in this, in a way that, like, no offense to Cypher, is a little boring.
Yeah.
Like, I love Fate of the Furious as a movie, but I don't necessarily, like, I don't look to that Charlize role and I'm like, wow, look at her go. I'm more like, well, you're the only person that could do that for me, and I wouldn't be like, oh, stop. But I think that as Monkey, like, she has such great lines in this in a way that, like, you know, she's not even on screen, and I also think this is the only opportunity we're going to have to have Charlize just as a voice actor.
She has a cameo in Astro Boy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just think, like, we spend a lot of time watching Charlize movies, and I think that I don't often pay attention to her vocal acting in a way, like, as separate from everything else, so I appreciated the opportunity to do that. So this is my new number 2, right behind Young Adult.
I am really surprised that I, of the three of us, was the one who resisted putting this in number 2, because this movie is my kryptonite.
I think that makes sense, though, because you'd be way more likely to watch Fate of the Furious, because it won't make you cry.
Yeah, that's true. Rewatching this was... I had to brace myself.
I did too. I was kind of like, this is going to be hard.
Because I had no idea what I was in for when we went to see it. I was like,
Correct.
pretty, Charlize, yay! And then it was like, oh, this is 2 hours meditating on dead parents. I was messed up. I had to talk about it at therapy.
I also, I remember watching the first one, and when I, figured out the metaphor,
Yeah.
and, the name of the movie was different than I had thought all along, because he uses the original strings on the shamisen to escape, and also to kill his aunt.
Yeah.
He kills his aunt, and then he escapes from them, so it seemed like those were, the magic things, and then it's only, after that where you're like, no, it's not about magic being powerful. I feel like watching it a second time, it didn't have that same gut punch that it did.
Yeah.
You were still gut punched?
My gut will always be punched by this.
By, also from IMDb trivia, the longest stop-motion animation film ever made.
Really?
Yes.
How long is it?
At
It's
1
an hour?
minute longer than Coraline.
Oh, okay.
But 141. I mean, there's no, your various Wallaces and Grommets are not very long.
Right.
So, the movie that hits you right in the gut is also as long as it could possibly be. So,
Yeah.
enjoy that.
It's so nice to watch a movie that's less than 2 hours.
It is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
refreshing.
Why are so many movies so long nowadays? I don't understand.
I get so excited. I just looked at my upcoming critic screening list, and that movie with Amy Poehler and Will Ferrell
Yeah.
is 88 minutes, and I'm like,
Whoa.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna get home at a reasonable hour. It's not gonna overstay its welcome. I love short movies.
I agree. So, you said that you ranked this as your third animated film from
Of
2016.
2016. Can I see the list and
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and of episodes you have done so far? I apologize for not memorizing them.
That's okay.
That's
We'll
fair.
forgive you.
Okay, yeah.
You haven't seen all of these movies
No,
because some of
definitely
them
not.
were made in the last century.
Yes. So,
We've never made a guest do this before.
okay, this is of the things I've seen. This is definitely better than both Huntsman's. This is way better than Aeon Flux. I think this is better than The Cider House Rules. For some reason, I do not remember that movie
It's
well.
not
It's
good.
very forgettable.
It's extremely bad.
I actively hate The Italian Job.
Oh.
And I mean, so I guess it's number 3 for me as well.
Does Bagger Vance beat it for you?
I have not seen The Legend of Bagger Vance. I think I have an identical list to all of you, where Young Adult would be number 1 and Fate of the Furious would be number 2.
Well,
There you go.
they have this
Oh,
edging
right,
out
right,
Fate of the
right.
Furious. So
Yeah.
you're identical to me.
Yes.
I did want to talk about, I don't know if this is helpful podcasting or not, but the ant's creepiness, what is it about shots of feet, 2 inches above the ground, just floating, that is so ominous? It reminds me of the episode of Buffy.
Same.
Yeah.
Hush.
And I feel like there are other instances where that happens, but I think the way that they shoot the ants is so effective, and the way they use the big hats to cover their faces, and them being in masks with their old-timey cigar things. I'm like, why do moon people need to smoke?
And then when the bottom part of her mask breaks off and you
Yeah.
see she has a normal face underneath, it
Yeah.
somehow becomes even scarier.
Yeah.
This movie is so awesome.
So good.
Okay, so thank you so much for listening. We haven't done the where you should listen to us thing in a while. Bob, where should people listen to us?
So they can listen to us on any podcasting platform that you can download podcasts on your phone or wherever, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, etc. We're also available on Mixcloud. I also upload our latest episodes onto SoundCloud. We're also available on YouTube. All kinds of places that are presumably, some of them at least are unblocked by your work's network. So you can listen to them at work.
Wherever you're listening to us, you should do the thing where you give us stars or subscribe or leave comments.
Sure.
Validate us.
I would also like to put a special plug I think you should listen to us. Thank you for doing that. But I think more people should follow us on Instagram, where you can see the beautiful and true Photoshop skills of Robin Elaine Hitchcock, and you get a visual representation of who Keanu should be in all these movies, and every single one cracks me up every time, and that is at Charlize Theronathon.
That's at Charlize Theronathon. Our other social media is all at Theronathon. Thank you so much to our guest, Sean Collier. You should check out his podcast, You Can't Handle the Truth. Also available on all sorts of platforms.
Yeah, you can find it on iTunes and Stitcher and anywhere that you get your podcasts. Charlize episodes include definitely Fate of the Furious.
Guest star Liz Labaz.
And what are other recent Charlize movies from the past 3 or 4
Mad Max
years?
Fury Road.
There's definitely a Mad Max Fury Road episode. Hey, we haven't said this already. Why don't you guys come and do an Atomic Blonde episode?
Yay! Studios, please screen that for critics so we can.
HandleTheTruthPodcast.com, and my Twitter is basically a list of things I'm doing. That's at Sean Collier PGH.
Yeah, you can also see him do stand-up comedy live. Do you have anything coming up in the...
When does this
This
drop?
goes up on Thursday.
Yeah, get your tickets now for the DVE Comedy Festival on Friday, June 23rd. There's a great main stage headlined by Colin Quinn. Then there is a late show at Club Cafe, which is an all-star Pittsburgh stand-up show with, let's see, Aaron Kleiber, Jeff Conkle, Ed Bailey, Dave Bracey, Suzanne Lawrence, Felicia Gillespie, John Dick Winters, and Alex Stapula. Plus guests from the main stage. That is Club Cafe Friday the 23rd. And then we are doing a DVE edition of the stand-up Get Down at Arcade Comedy Theater on the 24th with Team Me versus Team Bill Crawford. So attend those things.
Get your tickets now! All right, thank you again for listening.
Thank you for being our guest. We will edit out all your disparaging comments about Keanu, I assume.
I
Robin.
understand.
Thank you to Alex Reed for our theme song.
Oh, thank you so much.
We love it.
Every time. Every time.
And
Alex
most
Reed.
of all,
Thank you, Charlize!
And now you've heard the Theronathon. Every word of the Theronathon. It just occurred at the Theronathon. I hope your heart was stirred by the Theronathon, and that your kitties purred at the Theronathon. Your curiosity spurred by the Theronathon. You're turning into a nerd for the Theronathon. And if you're flipping the bird at the Theronathon, we are undeterred at the Theronathon. We're eating yogurt and curd at the Theronathon.
you must blink, do it now.
Yes, that
Which,
is-
by the way, I spent a long time trying to think of a sound version of that for us to say at the beginning of this podcast. Like, is there a sound equivalent of blink?
No. Probably.
If you must click, do it now. I don't know.
If you must cotton swab your ear, do it now.